Good morning. I want to look at Psalm 90 this morning. Now, Psalm 90 is not my psalm of the day from my daily listening. That's Psalm 91. But I don't want to skip Psalm 90 because Psalm 90 is significant in so many ways. It's significant, first of all, because it's so often quoted, so often referenced, and contains many familiar verses. It's also significant because it begins book four of the Psalms. The Psalms are divided, remember, into five separate books. And they're divided not chronologically, but they're divided thematically or categorically by the types of psalms and the themes that are in those psalms. And Psalm 90 is a psalm that's written by Moses. And what's interesting to me about that is the way that it begins. Listen to this. Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. So Moses is praying a prayer to God. Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. Now, what's interesting to me is not the fact that Moses is looking to God as the everlasting one, the source of his hope. The interesting thing to me about it is he starts by saying, Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. And that's interesting because Moses himself was a man who never really knew a permanent physical dwelling place as a place of security. In other words, he never dwelt really in God's promised land, the land that had been promised to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. He was born and grew up as a part of a foreign nation in Egypt. Israel had formed itself as a nation. They had grown prosperous, but they were always foreigners. They were never Egyptians. And then Moses even had to flee that land as a fugitive because he had killed a man and the Egyptian authorities were after him. And so he had to flee even the home that he had known and become a refugee in another place. And he lived there for decades before God told him to go back to Egypt to bring the people of Israel out of Egypt. And even when the people of Israel came out of Egypt by God's miraculous power, Moses then, with the people, wandered for 40 years in the desert, never making it into the promised land. And most people believe that this psalm was written somewhere in that period around when Deuteronomy was written, when Israel had been wandering for about 40 years and was about to enter into the promised land. Moses would die before getting there. He never knew the permanent physical dwelling place that God was going to provide. And yet he was able to look at the Lord and say, you have been our dwelling place. Now, the metaphor is powerful because where do we go when we feel insecure, when we feel unsafe? Well, we go to our homes by and large. That's the reason why, in the midst of this stay-at-home order, we're being told to stay. Because when a world is a dangerous place, we find safety at home, by and large. I know there's places where that's not true, and I know there's families where that's not true, but by and large, our understanding of home is a place of safety. And so the metaphor for us becomes, Lord, you have been our dwelling place. Our ultimate place of safety, our ultimate place of comfort is not found in a physical dwelling. It's found in the refuge that comes only from the Lord. Now, Moses wrote these words, but these words have often and also been used by many as encouragement and as something to find strength in. For example, another hymn, this one from Isaac Watts, the English pastor who lived at the end of the 1600s, beginning of the 1700s. He became a pastor in 1702, I think. He wrote "Joy to the World," "When I Survey the Wondrous Cross," other hymns that you're familiar with. But he also wrote "Our God, Our Help in Ages Past," and it's a hymn that's pretty familiar, and it's based on Psalm 90. Let me just read a couple of stanzas to close us. Our God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, our shelter from the stormy blast, and our eternal home. Under the shadow of your throne, your saints have dwelt secure. Sufficient is your arm alone, and our defense is sure. Before the hills in order stood, or earth received her frame, from everlasting you are God, to endless years the same. And then let me just skip to the last stanza. Our God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come. Oh, be our guard while troubles last, and our eternal home. Let's let that be our prayer today. be our guard while troubles last and our eternal home. Have a great day.